With the Hall of Fame game done and in the books and practice starting again, let's talk about 5 players who potentially lost their jobs last Thursday. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Jets with Tigo. My name is Tigo, and today we're going to be going over 5 players who did not play or played during the Hall of Fame game who potentially lost their jobs to guys that absolutely performed exceptionally well at the Hall of Fame game. So we're going to be talking about the 5 players who possibly lost their jobs and the players that took their jobs. But before we get into that, really quickly, 50% of you guys aren't subscribed to the channel, so make sure to hit the subscribe button. It is the easiest way to show your support to the channel and to show that you're enjoying the Jets content. But let's hop right into today's content. And the first player shouldn't surprise anybody with the fact that they probably lost their job because they played during the Hall of Fame game. They did not play well, and other players around them were absolutely lightning rods. And the first one is going to have to be Ashton Davis, the safety. We have been running the Ashton Davis project for a long time, and in the hopes that his athleticism would eventually hold up enough for his mind to get to a point to where he can play the game at a high level, because Ashton Davis quite possibly is the best athlete that we have on the team. But that never happened, and we continue to see Ashton Davis making mistakes in the game while other players who were competing for his job succeeded. And I think the player that ultimately is the reason that Ashton Davis doesn't make this football team at the end of the 53-man roster cuts is Trey Dean, the undrafted free agent safety. He had the most tackles of any safety, of any player for the New York Jets in the Hall of Fame game. 8 tackles, 7 of them being solo tackle. He just had his nose in and around the ball constantly. And when you have a guy who is supposed to have that same kind of skill set with Ashton Davis missing as many tackles as he does, and then you have a guy like Trey Dean, an undrafted free agent who doesn't miss any tackles, it's easy to see why Ashton Davis won't be making this roster. And it's sad to see him go. If the Jets do cut Ashton Davis during the 53-man cut down, the New York Jets would save $2.75 million against the cap, giving us more spending ability at the trade deadline to go and acquire a big piece, which seems to be what the New York Jets are expected to do this trade deadline. Moving on, another player that played at the Hall of Fame game and did not look good while the other players around him looked exceptionally well is Bryce Hall. Bryce Hall is 2 years removed from being a starter for the New York Jets. A lot of Jets camp didn't want the New York Jets to draft Sauce Gardner at number 4, not because of his inability or not because he wasn't a good player, but because we felt comfortable with Bryce Hall and DJ Reed as our starting outside corners. And the reality is, every single one of the people who had that opinion was wrong. Sauce Gardner is that dude. I'm so happy that he is on our football team, but more importantly, I'm really happy that Bryce Hall isn't starting. Every time Bryce Hall steps onto the field, he seems to get worse. His coverage isn't getting better. He's not making the plays that he needs to do. And for a player that if we cut, we can save $2.75 million against the cap, it makes a ton of sense, especially with guys like Brandon Echols, Javelin Guidry, Craig James, and the new drafted Jared Bernard-Converse, who is slated to be more of a safety than a cornerback, but he played both, so I think he'll fit a nice hybrid role there. With all of those guys providing higher upsides right now and showing more in practices and in the Hall of Fame game, it's hard to find a way to keep Bryce Hall on the 53-man roster and legitimately have a reason for him to be there. Craig James was showing some incredible coverage in practice and in the Hall of Fame game. Brandon Echols, minus the 2 stupid penalties that we saw at the beginning of the Hall of Fame game, was exceptionally productive, not only in the special teams, but also in coverage and all of that stuff. Javelin Guidry being able to be the only player who can play nickel right now, backing up Michael Carter, as well as having the ability to play outside and on special teams, and Jared Bernard-Converse being a draft pick. It's hard to find a spot on this team for Bryce Hall. And like I said, saving the $2.75 million puts the Jets at a nice $5.5 million of additional cap space that they didn't have before, letting the New York Jets go at the deadline and really attack it. Continuing on with a player that probably lost his job, and it's really unlucky because I had faith in this guy, is Hamzah Dean. Hamzah Dean was able to play 2 snaps in the Hall of Fame game before getting hurt, and unfortunately got hurt, missed the rest of the game, and then we got to see the trio of Chaz Surratt, Zaire Barnes, and I'm not even going to try to... Cherilis? Don't know how to pronounce his name, but the undrafted free agent. They absolutely killed it. And it's absolutely phenomenal to be able to see these guys provide such a high value to the New York Jets in a way that, you know, we didn't expect from these guys. One of the biggest concerns going into this year was going to be, and was always going to be, the linebacker depth. But it comes to, and it shows through the play that we saw in the Hall of Fame game and at practice, that the New York Jets feel comfortable with the linebackers that they have right now. And that is a big, you know, endorsement of these players. We had the opportunity to go out and get Quan Alexander, who did not get a lot of money from the Pittsburgh Steelers, but we didn't. We instead chose to stick with what we had, and like I said, that is incredibly telling of what we think about our linebacker room, and it is an unfortunate situation that Hamzah got hurt in this situation. Now, we don't save any money by cutting Hamzah Dean at all because of how the cap situation works. You only pay for the top 51 players on your 53-man roster against the cap. And he had a $910,000 salary. Does not affect the cap at all because he's amongst a bunch of players who make that money. So we don't save any money, but we do get to carry some of these other guys with a little bit more potential than him right now. Now, these last 2 players are guys that shouldn't make the roster. They right now seem to be coaching favorites, but with how some of these other guys have performed, they shouldn't be on the roster. They should be cut and make room for some other younger players to stay with this team and so that we can save them, but these might be a little bit of a long shot, and they're just players that I believe shouldn't make the roster. And number 1, the first player that we're going to start with is Solomon Thomas. Now, Solomon Thomas, we brought back to the New York Jets this year, and I don't understand why. Now, I get at the beginning of the whole process, we didn't have all that much depth and all that much talent in the defensive tackle room, and with how thin it seemed like free agency was going to be in terms of what we felt comfortable spending for the defensive tackle room, it didn't seem like there was a lot of options. Bringing back Solomon Thomas made a ton of sense. But Solomon Thomas has not played well in a couple of years and did not play well for the New York Jets last year. And after being able to see Michael Clemens' new body and how he can use it in the Hall of Fame game, I am totally cool with cutting Solomon Thomas, moving Michael Clemens inside full-time where he should probably be because he has lost a step because of how big he is from playing on the outside. It just makes sense for everybody involved. Michael Clemens would absolutely excel inside where he can use his length and his strength. Solomon Thomas does not provide length and strength and just playability right now, and we can save $350K by cutting him. It's not a lot of money. Unfortunately, when you sign a player to a one-year deal, cutting him doesn't save you a ton of money, but it's still something, and that is what matters. And then the last player that probably shouldn't be on this football team when it comes time to cut players and making the 53-man roster, last but not least, is Justin Justin Hardy does not provide any value to this football team outside of his special teams ability. Now, he does provide an exceptionally high special teams playability, but when you only have 53 spots for a team that is this close and is this insistent on going for a Super Bowl this year, you cannot waste a spot on a player who doesn't provide value to the offense or the defense, and that's exactly what Justin Hardy is. You never, ever want to see Justin Hardy taking a single snap that's not a special teams snap at any point in time. And when we saw the special teams unit in the Hall of Fame game, we saw a lot of really good players playing the positions that Justin Hardy does, almost as good as he did, and albeit against second teams and all of these whatnot. But we saw for the first time in a long time a wealth of possibilities for the New York Jets in terms of special teams players. Players like Zaire Barnes, Jason Brownlee. Is it Justin Brownlee? Let me find out. It is Jason Brownlee. Javelin Guidry. Zach Kuntz, Kenny Yeboah, all of these different guys showed us what they can do on special teams at a really high level, and we still have Brandon Echols. And when you can save $2.35 million by cutting him, giving the Jets a total of $24 million of cap space this year, it almost becomes a no-brainer. We have a special teams coordinator for a reason. His job is to coach up these players and to make them players that not only contribute on the offensive and the defensive side of the ball according to the OC and the DC, but have a value in special teams. Justin Hardy currently doesn't provide that, and other players do, and every spot on the 53-man roster is very, very important. Let me know what players you think lost their jobs and who took it from them during the Hall of Fame game. We've got a ton of preseason to go, and my expectation is that this list is only going to solidify itself more and more as we see things go on. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Get on out of here. Go Jets.